This week, we are going to be covering HTML and CSS menus. This does not require any reading from the book. We are going to be using the HTML and CSS that we already know. We're just going to be combining them in a little different way. And so the way that we create most menus is through unordered lists. So we use the UL tag and the LI tag. We combine that with a little bit of CSS and we get a menu. And so here is the HTML that was used for this example. And here is the CSS. You'll notice that we set the list style type to none, so we get rid of the bullets. Okay, and we give it a little background color. We add a little box shadow to make it look more like buttons, and we set a width. And then we set a hover on it, so it looks a little bit more, like an actual button command that you might see in a menu. And then we do a little bit of formatting on the anchor itself. So we've got the hover state and like the regular link state. Okay, and all of this explicitly explains the CSS that you already know, just in case you forgot. And that type of vertical menu is used in a layout that might look like this. And for that type of layout, the display is inline flex. That's how you would get the navigation and the content next to each other. And here is the settings for width and padding and all of that fun stuff. And if you want to see it, this is what it looks like. And you can right click view source and actually see all of the HTML and CSS. A little variation is adding a header and a footer. So it's the same basic example with the header and footer. And so instead of putting display inline flex on the body, we do that on a div instead. Okay, because we don't want the header or the footer to be part of that flex display. We just want the navigation and the section to be side by side. And so here is an example of that. In addition to doing a main menu, you can do submenus by adding a nested list. Okay, and there's basically two different ways you can code this up in your CSS. With nested lists, it does get a little bit tricky because this is all inside of a nav area. So if you want to target the nested list, okay, the submenu, you have to say nav ul ul, okay, and that targets this. And then if you wanted to target the lines within and the anchors, that's nav ul ul li a link. Nav ul ul li a visited. Okay, that's how you're getting down here. So that is a lot of tags to specify. It confuses some people. So instead of doing that, you can use IDs and have a menu and a submenu ID. Okay, and for some people, this makes way more sense to use the IDs instead of, doing the nav, ul, li business. Okay, so it's kind of the same CSS. It's just we're using menu and submenu. Now, in your textbook assignment, you are going to get to use both, so you will see which one you like better. To create a horizontal navigation bar like this, okay, nothing really changes in our HTML. It is the CSS that changes a little bit because we need to change the display to inline table. Okay, and that is done on the UL that's inside nav. And if we prefer using IDs, this is the same example. Using IDs, I did style it just a little bit different. For horizontal menus with submenus, a lot of people like this because that gives you a drop-down menu. It's a little trickier to create. The hover is where the hover state of the link is where you're going to get that drop-down effect. And so that's nav ul li hover. If the hover contains an unordered list, then it will display block. Okay, and so if you're pointing at these and there's an unordered list inside, it will display it. So obviously we don't want the drop-down lists to display unless we're pointing at them. So the initial state that you need to declare is display none. And then when you point, so in this instance, if I pointed at photography sites, I would see the drop-down. And then here is each line within the submenu is going to have this CSS. And so here's photography sites. Okay, so this is setting up the CSS. That is setting up the link, and here is the hover. So that's why when I point and it changes color, it's because of this. Okay, and when it initially displays, you can see that I've got a radial gradient, got some padding, which is where that white is coming from. Okay, and so here is all the CSS that's used to create that drop-down. And you will be working with the drop-down as well. Quite often in our menus and menu icons, we want, or in our menus, we want icons. And sometimes you'll see an actual icon bar for a menu. You can use Font Awesome. There are Font Awesome 4 and Font Awesome 5 are the current versions. And Font Awesome 4 you can use without an account. If you click on the link, you come into W3 Schools, it shows you the different icons. And then if you click on Try It, it actually shows you the library that you need to bring in. And it shows you how to use it. So it's an I tag for icon with a class, and the class has the, it's basically specifying the Font Awesome icon. You'll notice that you can change the size and color through inline CSS, and you could even create a button and put an icon in it. That's what this is showing you. Okay, so Font Awesome 4 you can use without an account. Font Awesome 5, you have to have an account to use the icons. The accounts are free. So I would encourage you guys to create an account. When you go to the site, if you go directly to the site, you can create an account, and then you'll notice that there are free and pro icons. Okay, and as long as you have an account, you can use the Font Awesome 5 icons. If you click on this link and you go into W3 Schools, you'll notice that the way to pull in the library is a little bit different. than Font Awesome 4. Font Awesome 4 actually pulled in the library, and this uses a script tag. And when you get an account, you will have a code that they give you, and you actually have to put your own code in here. And then you can use the icons. Okay, so you have to pull in the library a little differently than you did in Font Awesome 4. Okay, and here are some examples. And so this is the code that I used. These are all Font Awesome 4. Actually, I lied. They're Font Awesome 5 because I have my code. Don't use my code. You guys need your own. So what happens a lot with students when they are using Font Awesome is they try to pull in the link for Font Awesome 4, but the classes they're using are Font Awesome 5 classes. You will not see the Font Awesome 5 icons if you are using the Font Awesome 4 link. Okay, you have to be using the script tag for Font Awesome 5 to see the Font Awesome 5 icons. Okay, so, you know, if you go in to Font Awesome 4, you see where it is. And, you know, you're looking in this section of W3 schools. All of these work with the link. Okay, so you don't have to have an account. It's just if you start using the Font Awesome 5 ones that you need the account. So hopefully that makes perfect sense. To create an icon bar, you'll notice that I set the class equal to icon bar because the styling has to be a little bit different. And then you'll also notice that for one of the links, I set it to active. Just because when they first come in into your page, whatever page is displayed by default, that would be the active page. So here it would be my home page. And then the steps to create an icon bar. So if you're using Font Awesome 4, you're going to include the link. And then you're going to add your icon tags. And they have to go between the anchor tags because they're basically, the icon is becoming your link. Okay, and then for a vertical bar, this is the type of CSS that you need. And you'll notice that, you know, on the hover, it changes color. So this is giving it that gray background. I set the width. And then you'll notice that for the anchor, we've got display block. I center it. And remember, the icon itself is inside the anchor tag. Okay, that's why it's centered. There's padding, which is giving space on either side. You'll notice that I've got a transition, which is why it kind of gradually changes color from gray to black. On the hover, I've got it showing as black. Text color is white, and I adjusted the size. So this is vertical, and this is how you would create a horizontal one. Now, if you don't want to use Font Awesome, you can use HTML code. There's something called HTML entities, and they have codes that create different symbols. And so here are some pretty common ones: trademark, copyright, all of that. But there's also like card symbols, yin yang, peace symbol, all can be created with these HTML entities. So if you want to see more, I do have links. And here's an example of an icon bar using HTML entities. In fact, I've got the entities that I used right down here. And you guys will be creating an icon bar. Okay, so you'll get practice with this. And then finally, another type of menu deals with animated navigation buttons. And so these are kind of fun. So if you point, the button displays and you can click on it and go to the site. So this is some CSS magic that we are utilizing here. Here's our HTML. And so we are using absolute positioning and we are adjusting the top and the left position for these. So the very first button has a left position of 0 or a left position of -80. Okay. And then the top is set to 20. So all of these have -80, which is why they're half off screen. And then you can see that the top position is adjusted so they're not on top of each other. And I adjusted the colors. And so on the hover, which is where you're pointing at it, it just changes the left to 0. So it goes from -80 to 0. And that's why all of a sudden you can see it. Okay. And the anchor in my side nav has a little transition on it, which is why it kind of slides out instead of just pops into view. We have some padding, we have width, we got rid of the underlining. Okay, so all of this is just normal CSS. You can see we have a border radius. Okay, and so what that did, remember it goes from top left around clockwise. So there is no rounded border on the top left, a little rounding on the top right, a little rounding on the bottom right, no rounding on the bottom left. Okay. And they're all set up that way. So all of the buttons have this formatting, and then all we've done is change color. Okay, you'll get to practice with this as well. Okay, so this is kind of a fun lesson, nothing new to read. But when you get into the textbook assignment, you will be practicing with all of these different menus. And I'm actually giving you an entire structure. So you're going to have to download that and unzip it. And then after you unzip it, make sure you're using the unzipped version. This is what you're going to see. This unzipped version should be in your CIT180 lesson 10 folder. And all of this will be in a folder called Acme Vertical. Okay, so when you unzip this, it's going to create an Acme Vertical folder and put all of this inside. That Acme Vertical folder should go inside lesson 10. Okay, and this video shows you how to do all of that. Okay, and then we go through changing your CSS, okay, to create a menu. Okay, and so this is using all of that nested selectors. And so once you finish this and save it, then you're going to save, you're going to make a copy of the folder. Okay, so you've got this Acme Vertical folder that you're going to copy, and you're going to change the name to Acme Vertical ID. And so this is going to be the same basic thing, but instead of using all of the nested selectors, what you're going to do is create some IDs and use those instead. And this will give you an idea of which technique you prefer. Do you prefer the nested selectors? Do you prefer using the IDs? Okay, and because you're using IDs with this one, that does require going into the pages and changing them. Because if you don't go into the pages and change them, it's not going to pick up the ID formatting. So you need to open all these pages and make the changes to them. Okay, it's just two. In fact, after you change the first one, you can just copy paste into the rest. And then for all these pages, you need to make this little change. Okay, and so those were for vertical menus. There's another zip folder for you to download that's going to give you pages for a horizontal menu and submenus. So the structure is kind of the same. It's just that the name is different. And then you're going to go through and start modifying the CSS. And if you wanted to see all the CSS in one spot, I did include that here. Okay, but don't try to copy and paste because you'll get weird hidden characters. Okay, so at this point, you're going to have three different folders. You're going to have Acme Vertical ID, Acme Horizontal. This next example, you're going to download this page. So you're going to right click, save link as, or save page as. It just depends on your browser. And you're going to put it in the lesson 10 folder. You're going to open it for editing. And you're going to be adding an icon bar to the bottom. So this page actually is kind of a nice example of pull down menus. Okay. So you can right click, view the page source, and take a look at the CSS that was used for those pull down menus. Okay, but what you're going to be adding is the icon bar on the bottom. Okay, and these are all Font Awesome 4, so you should be able to just simply use that link. And then here is the formatting for the icon bar and the footer. And then the final page, you're going to download Animation Fun. And the reason it is named this way is because I've got some animation going on in the bottom, and you're going to be adding those tabs that are only partially displayed so that you point and then they come into view. Okay, and so this is your HTML that you're going to be adding, and then here's all the CSS. And this does use absolute positioning. If you remember, the initial position of those buttons is 80 pixels off the screen. And so then when you point, the left position becomes 0. So the end, we have a little transition effect. So it kind of slides into view. Okay, so those are all of the menus you're going to be creating. This is a summary of how you're going to receive points. Make sure that you transfer everything to the web and that you check things live, especially when you're getting ready to put the links on your assignment page, because all of these Acme things are in folders and you want to get the links correct. And you only are going to need to link to the home page. Okay, from the home page, I can find everything. For your lab assignment. You are going to convert your assignment page into a page that has 2 menu navigation bars. You're going to have one for your textbook assignments, and you're going to have one for the lab assignments. You're also going to be adding a navigation bar to the footer of your page. So here is an example of what that will look like. And so here is a video kind of showing you what to do. You are going to want to take your current assignment page and rename it to version 1, rename the CSS to version 1, and then save a new copy as assignments. And the new copy is what you're going to change. This is going to be the old one. This is the current one. And then you're going to need to create nested lists. And you're going to need to add the CSS. So a good model for this is that profitable business example from the textbook assignment. Here we've got adding the navigation bar. Now, I don't want you guys to have my links here. You guys need to have your own. And it doesn't really matter to me what you link to. So you guys can link to whatever you want, but you do need to have 4 of them. Okay, so here's my example. I have 5. You guys can link to what you want. Don't just copy and paste this because these are my links. So this needs to be to your own stuff. Then finally, you're going to add the lesson 10 links to your page. And transfer everything up, and you definitely are going to want to make sure that these links work. Okay, if you have any questions or if you run into problems, let me know, and have an awesome week.